partner. Not all of my classes get that privilege, so yay for you. Show me your screens just really quick. I saved this one for Thanksgiving because, Thanksgiving and food, I feel like go hand in hand. But the real purpose of this project is to just help you get even better at sensory details. So a lot of you already know how to do sensory details, but just because you are okay at them doesn't mean you can't get better. So I want to start with, why are sensory details, why are they such a big deal? And let me, before I get your answers, in my opinion, out of all of the tricks that I teach you, my opinion, the top 3, similes and metaphors, I think are the biggest, followed by hooks, but not just at the beginning, hooking all the way through, followed by sensory details. So I think those 3 things really set you apart as awesome creative writers. So now let me open it up to you. Why do sensory details make your writing so much better? And I think there's a bunch of right answers. So Mary, you had one. What's one idea?
It's just like more descriptive and brings more depth.
Okay, so straight up just more descriptive. And yes, also does bring more depth. What else?
It makes it more intriguing for the reader.
It really does. It takes pretty boring sentences and actually makes them more interesting. Riley? Yes, it's so much easier to imagine when I have more sensory details. What's another one? Yes, they can more easily imagine themselves in that place. What else?
It could clear up things that happen in the future
Mhm.
if you're not descriptive.
Mhm.
It might not be that obvious.
Yeah.
With the detective one.
And if you don't do enough description, their imagine is left too much to themselves, right? So you really are like controlling their imagination. The other thing I would say as well, the only one I didn't hear, if you think about it, we're basically lying in creative writing because we're making up stuff that's not real. And that, like, the trick to doing that is a lot of sensory details. We take something totally fake and make it seem real because of tricks like this. So we're going to create a little restaurant menu, and I think the first thing to kind of start out thinking is your restaurant can be as weird as you want. So this is a really easy assignment, but that will make it more fun. That if you want to go with just a typical restaurant where they sell different entrees and they have desserts, that's totally fine. You really totally can. But I would also encourage you to think, if I'm doing this for 2 days and I want to enjoy it, I might pick a fandom and think about a restaurant for a specific place or a specific story. Like if you want to do, like I had a kid one year who did Fortnite falafel free-for-all. It was hilarious and so fun, and he really loved Fortnite, so I had that as well. You could think of a certain monster and do a restaurant focused on a certain type of character. So if you want to do like Vampire Cafe, right? Or just a restaurant for aliens. You don't even, I know this sounds weird, but you don't even have to sell food necessarily at your restaurant. I have had kids get really creative with how can I approach that differently. So if you want your restaurant to be more, I'm selling Crocs with different flavors. Like I had somebody do that last year. Crocs, like the shoe kind of Crocs. And his menu was the menu of the tastiest Crocs. Like I've seen some really, really weird stuff. So I hope that you will feel free to make it as creative as you want in that way. So there's a couple of different ways this gets graded. None of the steps are difficult, but it's pretty specific. So you're doing a great job listening, so keep that up. But number 1, you're going to have 6 items that you're selling on your menu, which is really easy. And you get 2 days to do this. So you'll want to try and do 3 today and 3 tomorrow. It'll just be that simple, okay? So 6 items, but every single one of them needs to be a 4-sentence description. So that's part of your grade, but not all of it. So 6 times 4 is what, everybody? 24. Yeah, so about 24 sentences. And obviously, if you do more than that, if you do more than 6 items or you do more than 4 sentences, it's a really easy way to get coins that way, okay? Yeah.
Is it okay if instead of doing 4 sentences for each one,
Mm-hmm.
you do less sentences for one but more for each?
Yes, that is also allowed, but only a couple of times, because I do want you practicing extended description. So mostly focus on the 4 sentences thing. Yeah. Yeah.
What if you have like 12 menu items and 2 sentences?
No, I really want you to practice extended descriptions because it kind of challenges your creative writing a little bit better. So you do need to give each item a name, especially something kind of catchy and fun, and a price, and you get to make those up whatever you want. Give some effort to the design. I'm not expecting you to kill yourself off. I'll show you some examples in just a second, but give some effort to the design. And remember, because it's creative writing, it's totally fake. So really use your imagination. You can get really creative with the food, the theme of the restaurant, the type of patrons who would eat at that restaurant, all that kind of stuff. And then use whatever technology you're most comfortable with. Don't use Google Docs for the love of kittens and unicorns and rainbows and everything else that's good. Google Docs will not be your friend for this. I think Google Slides obviously is really easy, but there's also Canva, which is an option. Right now, when I went in and I typed in menu, obviously a lot of them are Thanksgiving themed. Yours does not need to be. When you start scrolling down further, there's a lot of other ideas. Just know, the first thing I do when I grade yours is I use AI checkers, so that's the first thing, right? And the second thing I do is I come find your same design here, and I make sure that you didn't just turn in what's already there, because kids have thought they could get away with that, and I know that trick. Don't do that, okay? You can use their template, and then you would replace it with your own stuff. But I want to show you just one trick about their templates. So let's say I wanted to use this one. The only downside, so you need how many menu items, everybody? And how many sentences each? So their menus are only one page, and some kids have had a really hard time. They never saw this. See right here where it says add page? There you go, okay? But I cannot tell you how many times that has happened over the years, that kids were like, I ran out of room. Okay, so remember, this isn't due until the end of the period tomorrow, and more than anything else, the majority of your grade comes from a lot of sensory details. I want you to think of your writing as a sponge, and you're shoving so many sensory details into that sponge that then it expands. So that's where, this is a 60-point project, and most of the points are coming from lots and lots and lots of sensory details. So remember, sensory details focus on the 5 senses: see, hear, taste, touch, smell. So it's really easy to do taste. It's also usually pretty easy to do sight and smell, but I am requiring that you use all of the senses. So sound or hearing is the one that most people have the hardest time with. So kind of think outside the box a little bit. Your sensory details about sound can be, yes, the person eating it, but there's a lot of sound involved in making food, right? It might be stirring or chopping or pouring. There's lots of other sounds involved. So you do have to include all 5 senses. When you're doing your sensory details, I think there's 2 things that make your sensory details good sensory details. So number 1, asking yourself how or why. So for example, it tastes good is not creative at all. So if you ask yourself, why does it taste good? When you answer those questions, that's how you get good sensory details. Or instead of, it tastes sweet, how? What is it that makes it taste sweet? So keep asking yourself how and why. Yeah. You sure? Okay. The other trick, and it's connected to those 3 big skills I told you I think matter than every other creative writing skill. Sensory details become extra, extra good when you use similes and metaphors. So let me give you an example, okay? Let's say I'm describing the color of my food, and maybe my restaurant was a monster cafe and I have a monster milkshake, and it's green, but green is not creative. So I'm going to use a sensory detail about sight, but I'm going to make a comparison to make that description way better. So it's green as the fungus between my toenails. I don't actually have toenail fungus, guys. But that's a good example of I made a boring description better by using a simile. I compared it to something else. So I recommend you do that a lot. Ask yourself how or why, or use similes. Okay. Now, this part, and then I'm almost done. This part is 20 points of your grade. Marcos, you are distracting people, so maybe do it right, not when in the middle of talking. But this is worth 20 points of your grade, like I said. So I am going to force you to map your writing. And the reason why is until you can see where your sensory details are, a lot of kids don't realize that A, they don't have a lot of sensory details, and B, they're focusing on 2 of the senses when there are 5 senses. So when you turn in your menu, it's going to look like a rainbow, you guys, because you're going to highlight, and this looks familiar because I had you do something sort of similar but different in 6th grade. You're going to highlight your sensory details. If you do it in Canva, for some weird reason doesn't allow highlighting, so instead just change the text color, and that totally counts. But anytime I write something about sight, I'll change the text color to blue. If it's something about sound, red. You don't have to have a lot of red, but somewhere on your menu I have to see something highlighted or changed to red so that I know that you had something about sound. Everything about taste is in purple, so you'll have a lot of purple, and that's fine. Anything about touch and feel in orange. And guys, we have feel, right? We have like actual senses in our mouth, right? So that could be some touch and feel also in your hands. Smell is another really easy one for this, so there's going to be a lot of green as well. But that's what I mean. Yours is going to look like a rainbow. That I'm forcing you to see how many sensory details am I using, where are they, and am I only focusing on one or two of the senses? So this is a big part of the project. So just to kind of help get you started, you can set up your menu however you want. If you want to just do a typical menu, you could have appetizer, main entree, dessert. You can also just do something like a hamburger joint. Hamburgers, sides, that's fine too. If you want yours to all be desserts, great, it could all be desserts. If it's not even really food stuff, but it seems like it is, that works too. So these are old examples. They don't have the highlighting. So that's the one big thing that I messed up last year. I forgot to take screenshots with the updated highlighting part. So yours, that's the one thing yours will have that these examples don't have. But I'm going to show you a couple examples. I want to start with this one, though. This one happened during the pandemic. I was at home grading this, Michael screen facing me, and I just lost it a little bit because this was so weird and I loved it. So their whole restaurant is just called Breads, which I just think is fantastic. Like, that's your restaurant name. And then they sell toast for $2.99. But listen to the sensory details. These are glorious and funny at the same time. A slice of luscious white bread toasted to perfection, slathered with butter that's been melted to a small pool of liquid atop the toasted bread. The smell is that of buttery perfection. And the feel of the toast in your hands is that of a warm slab of paradise. See how the sensory details took something boring like toast and made it seem glorious? That's the idea. That's why sensory details are so good. You can get as weird as you want. This whole restaurant is buttery bacon, and their descriptions are pretty awesome because of all the sensory details. This is one where it's not really even food. We have the burger of death, metal grilled cheese, stapler milkshake. There's some weird stuff going on there. This one has this really beautiful sensory detail. On the vanilla milkshake, the feeling of winter is brought to mind as snow falls in fluffy clusters onto your tongue. That's a beautiful simile. See how that made it really, really extra creative because they took my advice and they did a simile. So, we've got a bunch of different desserts. I love the real poisoned apple, but not really. More desserts. We've got more good descriptions here. So I'm not going to read all these to you, but if you're kind of stuck on your descriptions, we've got a normal American burger cooked exquisitely. The steak is seasoned by Gordon Ramsay himself. Like, all those little details I think are great. The last resource, just to make your life extra easy. Sometimes describing food can be easy, but sometimes it just depends on the person. If you're struggling describing food, this is a huge list of adjectives that help you with your descriptions if you are not sure. So especially with texture, so that's feel or touch, right? So that's one of the senses. Here's a bunch of words just for texture. Here's a bunch of words about just the food being prepared. So some of these might help you with the sound sensory details. The other thing I'll say before I set you loose, the big question I got a lot in first period today was, wait, I'm confused. So do I have to have all 5 senses on all 6 of my items? No. Your whole menu, as long as you have all colors somewhere, you'll have some more than others. But remember, think of it as a sponge. I want you to shove in as many sensory details as you possibly can, okay? And then the other question I know you're wondering about is partners. Is that what you're going to ask? Okay, you ask yours, and then I'll talk about partners.
What if you, could this count for, the 4 sentences? What if you describe, your restaurant? Up below, the title of your restaurant?
So that's not part of, my initial grading idea, but that would get you extra coins if you want to add a little extra thing like that. I think that's cool. So for partners, you can totally work with a partner, but unlike normal, so unlike, you're coming up with everything together, how you can work on the same restaurant, but you're going to do your 6 menu items and they'll do their 6. So put your name next to the ones that you created. If I'm creating a monster milkshake, I would put Emma in parentheses right after. Because then if you're going to do a group of 3, you technically can, but then you need 18 items on your menu, right? Because each one of you are doing your own 6. You can work on the formatting together, and it can be one restaurant with one theme that you're all doing together, but you have to do your own 6 menu items. And then the last thing, I made you this janky poster